Carlos, welcome to the show, man. How does it feel to be 𝗘𝗀𝗃𝗀 today?
Today's good, man. Just got back from a holiday weekend or a volleyball, what I call our volleyball weekends. Three and a half days watching my daughter play volleyball for about 12 hours a day. So actually being at work today, it feels like it's a great day, man.
That's nice. That's nice.
I actually started in the medical industry. I was actually, at a ripe age of 17 years old, I joined the Army as a medic. Spent a few years in the Army, came out and became a EMT and then eventually a paramedic. And my journey starts there, literally. It was like my first year working as a EMT. I did the 10 exemption thing, did that for a few months, and then, tax preparation season comes rolling around the corner there. Went to go get my taxes prepared and realized I had
I
owed a lot of money. And the problem was I didn't learn my lesson and I never changed those exemptions. When I owed that lot of money, I actually did the worst thing you could do. I didn't file the tax return. I figured I can't afford that tax bill, so I'm just not going to file the tax return. Well, following year, same thing rolls around, claiming 10 exemptions, living the lifestyle because, I'm a 21-year-old kid now at this time, making some really good money, doing a lot of overtime, never changed the taxes. And then year two rolls around, same problem, owed a lot of money. So I didn't file the tax returns. Brett, that went on for 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I went 8 years not filing my income tax returns and ended up having almost a six-figure tax bill between the IRS and the state of California. I was no longer in the EMS work anymore, and I was working as a real estate mortgage lender, and ended up meeting a young lady that was trying to buy a house. We ended up, my interest went further beyond the house, and I ended up asking her out on a date. A miracle popped up and she said yes. We ended up dating for a few months and I ended up getting engaged to this young lady. But here's what makes it worse, Brett. I pulled a scumbag move, which I talk about in my book, is I actually ended up getting married to this young lady and never told her about my non-filing and my almost six-figure tax bill.
Oh, wow.
When I had married her, I had realized what I did. She married into my tax problems. Wow. And I realized at that point in time I needed to do something. I didn't know there were specialists that dealt with this type of thing. So when I talked to him, his name was Ernie, he sat down with me. He said, Carlos, you're a good person. You made a stupid decision, but we can fix this. And that's what he did. And I actually finally went to my wife and said I had something that I had to talk to her about. And fortunately for me, she didn't divorce me. And I was able to get those tax problems fixed. And it wasn't until after we got that fix, I was looking at a career change in my late 40s. And I always remember a word that Ernie, the guy who helped me with my tax problem, he had told me, hey, if you're ever looking for a career change in your life, I think you'd be really good at this type of work. So in my early 40s, I ended up going back to school. I became a licensed enrolled agent by the Department of Treasury, where there's a specific license to legally represent taxpayers. I ended up getting that license, and then me and my wife, Liz, who sits right over here on the left-hand side, are the co-founders of Tax Debt Consultant. And this is really important for your listeners to understand, is that when you have a tax issue, IRS issue, there are only 3 people in the country that are allowed to actually legally represent you. It's a CPA, an attorney, or an enrolled agent. Those are the only 3 licensed individuals that are allowed to speak on your behalf in front of the IRS. But as the medical industry knows, and I like talking about the medical industry because I spent 11 years of my life in the medical industry, right? Mm-hmm. Is that we all know, even within our industry, right, they're specialists. In the medical industry, you go to a cardiologist when you got a heart problem, or, they're specific when you got a specific problem. So even though CPAs, attorneys, or EAs are legally able to represent you, kind of like any general doctor can give you medical advice, you want to go to somebody that actually specializes in this type of work, because less than 3% of all EAs attorneys and CPAs actually represent people in front of the IRS. I get so many referrals from attorneys that just don't do this type of work. People will go to them thinking, I need help, but they're like, we don't deal with the IRS. You need to find somebody that specializes in that.
Yeah.
So yes, you know, they're allowed to represent you, but you want to make sure that they understand what's involved there. And to answer that question, you know, what happens is that when somebody actually has unfiled returns like I had, or you know, a tax debt that it's way bigger than they had ever expected, whether they did something dumb like I did, basically not file my taxes or not and not pay the bills, or maybe it happened accidental. I just had a physician not too long ago that sold a very large real estate investment that ended up coming with a massive tax bill there, and he had no idea how he was going to handle that. So now it's our job to figure out, okay, what options are available based on the tax debt that you owe and based on your current financial position, your current income, and your current assets. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. The government just wants to know, you know, what's your ability to pay based on your financial situation. And it really depends. Every case is so dramatically different. What I'm telling people right now, you got to remember, I deal in that whole niche in regards of tax problems. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I'm telling investors, and I was on a couple of podcasts recently, real estate related podcasts, and this is the big thing I'm telling people to watch out for right now. Understand when you're purchasing a property, you need to know everything that's going on in regards to the property, correct? If you're buying a property, are there any liens attached to that? Any potential liens that's going to happen? You know, what do you know about or your investor partners? Oh, here's another big one. If you got partners and you're going into invest into a property. Here's my thing right now for real estate people to understand. The IRS for the last 4.5 years, basically at the beginning of COVID, the IRS stopped all collection procedures on everybody throughout the country. It was part of, hey, the country's going through a pandemic right now. We are going to not aggressively or even attempt to collect on any past tax debt. We're not going to do any bank levies, any tax liens, anything until this is over. So literally for the last 4 years, almost 4.5 years now, no tax liens have been filed, even though people hadn't filed their tax returns, had six-figure million-dollar tax debt. There were no tax liens actually filed. So what I've seen, and this is becoming an issue right now, people started getting into investments or buying properties, or may have had a partner in buying a property, and then all of a sudden, the IRS restarted all their collection efforts and restarted doing tax liens as of the last couple of months. So all of a sudden, here you are buying a property or have a partner on a property, and then all of a sudden a tax lien pops up, and now you can't do nothing on that property because you might have a $50,000, $100,000 tax lien on that property.
Wow.
Yet you didn't know that even existed, or it never popped up in your background check on the investor you were going to working on. So now all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing huge tax liens being filed all over the country on properties. And what happens if you got into a property that didn't know this tax lien existed, or even there was a possibility of this actually existing, or you partnered up with somebody that didn't pay their tax bills, and all of a sudden all their anything that has their social security number on it has tax liens being placed on it. So for me, that's a big thing right now, is just watch out, do your due diligence. We actually are now providing investors, you know, if you're going to partner up with somebody, you can actually tell the investor you'd like to get a transcript to make sure that there is no past tax liabilities, where there can be a tax lien filed on anything that they do in the future. For business owners and investors, we should see a lot of positive changes. Even if we're just keeping the tax credits and breaks that we've had for the last almost 8 years now. There's going to be a lot of positive investments. I mean, look at the President Trump is a real estate investor. So I would imagine there's going to be a lot of positive changes for that going forward. Now, here's the thing. You really want to work with a CPA, a person that understands these changes, because they're literally happening almost, it seems like, on a daily basis. Things are going to start changing. I don't do tax returns. That's not what I do. I deal with the old stuff, right? But
You deal
all
with
I
the
can do is
problems.
just, all I can do is just tell your listeners, if you are a real estate investor, make sure you have, you're working with a tax professional that understands the new changes that are happening, because they're literally going to happen daily. And then at the same time, I'm also telling people, because this is a challenge I'm seeing right now, Brett, that people that owe money to the IRS or have past due taxes, I'm actually getting people calling me saying that they're not going to worry about it right now, about their old tax problems, because they believe, because of the new administration, that he's going to get rid of the IRS. Please, please, guys. You know what? The IRS has survived, 30 multiple wars, multiple administrations. The IRS, changing government policies doesn't happen overnight. It can take years to do that. And if the new administration wants to get rid of the IRS, guess what? It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen the next day. It could take a couple of years, even if he's able to do it. The problem is, when you owe the government money, they can take your money out of your bank account within days. All that stuff happens pretty quickly. So please don't think that just because there's a new administration that doesn't like the IRS or is making statements about getting rid of it, that's not going to happen overnight.